back to Sheepman. There's a pretty little girl called Jessie Mahon. She lazy since she born. The girl wouldn't cook, she wouldn't read a book, so pack she back to Sheepman. There's a brown girl in the ring, tra-la-la-la-la. There's a brown girl in the ring, tra-la-la-la-la-la. Brown girl in the ring, tra-la-la-la-la. 'Cause she likes sugar, I like plum, plum, plum. Show me emotion, you think you're having fun? Are you going to marry her? Tra-la-la-la-la-la, show me emotion, think you're having fun? 'Cause she likes sugar, I like plum, plum, plum. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. The other day there, as I lay sleeping, I felt like you were in my arms. When I awoke there, I was mistaken, so I hung my head and cried. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Sing my little brown girl, cause she for me, cause she for me, cause she for me. Sing my little brown girl, cause she for me, cause I want to go home. For you may walk, and you may talk, and you can tell by my style and my fashion, by my high standing collar and my ties to my delight. I'm your dandy, I'm your dandy, I'm your dandy. Sang a boy pull at your pocket, and Dorothy ball, she ball, Dorothy ball for murder. Sang a boy went to market, saw Dorothy and pull at your pocket, and Dorothy ball, she ball, Dorothy ball for murder. Many nights I sit there with memories by the squad, thinking of the days I spent with a girl I've known. So I'm going back to see her before my days are done. Going back to see her in the land of the sea and sun. Once I had a notion about the virgin girl, so I put my thoughts in motion and found my heart in a whirl. Oh, I'm going back to see her before my days are done. Going back to see her in the land of the sea and sun. Ever since I left her, nothing's been the same. I think I'll put my anchor, go back and give her my name. Oh, I'm going back to see her before my days are done. I'm going back to see her in the land of the sea and sun. Beautiful, beautiful Barbados.
Everybody's
land of the Caribbean Sea. Come to my island, Barbados. Oh, come to my island and me. Please come back where the night winds are blowing. Please come back to the sun and the sea. You'll find peace, you'll find rest in Barbados. Oh, come back to my island and me. Beautiful, beautiful Barbados, gem of the Caribbean Sea. Come to my island, Barbados. Oh, come to my island and me. Please come back where the winds are blowing. Please come back to the sun and the sea. You'll find peace, you'll find rest in Barbados. Oh, come back to my island and me. Countries are swaying, night winds are blowing, softly as in the sun. To welcome you guys, yours to Barbados, 'cause this is where you belong. Leave all your cares and worries behind you. Tomorrow may never come. Greet everybody, don't take and hurry. Welcome the morning sun. No matter who, where you may come from, that doesn't bother me. 'Cause here we are, we have no problem with hospitality. Don't try to change us or rearrange us. We lost simplicity. This land is your land. This land is my land. Welcome the morning sun.
Never.
God sent midnight, Independence Day, Independence Day, Independence Day. God bless me on Independence Day. God bless me, we hope and pray. This little island in the middle of the sea, in the middle of the sea, in the Caribbean Sea. This little island in the middle of the sea, it means so much to me. Barbados is the sin, Barbados land of peace. Barbados means the world to me. Barbados land of sun, Barbados land of peace. Barbados means the world to me. It's up to you. You want me to do another one? Island in the sun.
And the final one.
This is my island in the sun, where my people have gone since time began. Though I may sail on many a sea, these shores will always be home to me. Oh, island in the sun, live to me my father's hand. All my days I will sing and pray. When sun. I lift my head below to the sky. Sun comes down with a burning glow, mingles my sweat with the earth. Oh, island in the sun, built to me by my father's son. All my days I will sing and praise the shining sun. I see woman on bending knees, casting care for her family. I see man at the water's side, casting nets at the certain tide. Oh, island in the sun, built to me by my father's son. All my days I will sing and praise all your goodness for to shining sun.
Thank you very much, Louis. What I need to remind you tonight that this is being filmed, and is it film or film? No. It's being filmed, and it's going live on the internet, so you can welcome those in all over the globe, all over Barbados, all over the UK. Welcome to the Barbados High Commission, to the 48th anniversary independence panel discussion. The next person coming up is a young lady. Her name is Logan McGarry, and she's going to do a piece of self-penned poetry. Give a round of applause to Logan McGarry.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Now, even though I wasn't born in Barbados, my parents were. Okay, thank you. Hold on, I've just got to put my glasses on first. I'll be with you in a moment, just putting on my glasses.
It's a good Asian accent.
Absolutely. I was going to explain earlier that even though I wasn't born in Barbados, my parents were and my siblings, and I went to school there. I went to school at St. Stephen's in Blackrock. And then Alexandra Girls' School in Whitestown. So I think I've got my bona fides all right. Yeah. I'd like to present to you a piece that I read at the Women's Day, and it's called Barbadian Woman. We are envied by so many just for being who we are. And who are we? Sprung from an island that produces so much more than golf courses and sandy beaches. We are every woman who has ever hefted a load of fresh produce onto her head with more grace and ease than a ballerina, and cruised as smoothly as a yacht down to the marketplace. We are every woman who has ever closed her eyes and opened her mouth and lifted her voice in thanks to heaven, so that the angels themselves pause to listen. We are every woman who has ever sat by the bedside of a feverish child till cock crow, with a brew of cerasee, lime, and sugar at the ready, sweetness and bitterness in the same cup. We are every woman who has ever hung a line of freshly laundered sheets, joking board and sunlight soap, got to get them colors white. Blazing sun and restless breeze play with our clothes like kites. We are every woman who has dived into that clear blue water and felt the weight of the world slide off her shoulders, roll down her arms, and drip from her fingertips. We are every woman who has walked the path, that same path so many Barbadian women have walked before us, those shining footprints showing us the way through this world. As we go forward, we should remember we too leave our footprints, our mark. The path goes forward towards the future and reaches back to our past. We are every woman, from the first to the last. If you'll bear with me for a few more minutes, I have one that I've written specifically for Independence Day. I've dedicated it to my father, who died on the 1st of December last year, Mr. Merrill Worrell. Independence Day. Strength and unity, pride and industry, exulting, free. On St. Andrew's Day in 1966, this island stood on her own 2 feet and turned her face towards the sun. Free, by the people, for the people, united we are one. By our actions we uphold her honor. By living well, we give credit to her birth. The red pride of Barbados burns within the hearts of every one of us. Defiant fist thrust towards the sky, grasping a saltire of sugar cane, a poignant reminder of the bitter tears shed to water this soil from which we all are sprung. By the people, for the people, together we are one. Neptune's broken trident reminds us we are free. Bluest sky with golden sands and deepest azure sea. As our flag flutters in the sun, our voices exalt to heaven. By the people, for the people, united, we are one. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Logan. It was a beautiful piece of poetry. I forgot my script, you know. For those who don't know me, I am Tyrone Roach, and I'm the chairman of the National Council of Barbadian Associations in the UK. This event is held in collaboration with the Barbados High Commission. And it's time now for you all to be upstanding as we sing the national anthem. And leading will be the new Deputy High Commissioner to Barbados, Ms. Alfia Wiggins. Very much. You may be seated. The first female High Commissioner to the UK, Ms. Alfia, Deputy High Commissioner. I know some of you don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, now for His Excellency Guy Hewitt, the High Commissioner to the UK.
Oh, please, no. Colleagues, good evening, and my task is simple: to commend the ladies who preceded me in song and poetry. They were outstanding. Continue to remind us that the very best of Barbados is to be found in our women folk. So I commend them and thank them. And there are a few good men as well. Tyrone's trying to get up, squeeze in. But no, I want to say thank you to the panelists, to the moderator in advance, I am looking forward to hearing about how they have been able, through their experiences, to weave a tapestry of experiences about Barbadians in the UK. This is significant for us as we go into the celebration of our independence here in the United Kingdom, but more so as we journey towards the celebration of our 50th anniversary of independence in 2016. We are going to hear more about that over the coming months as we try to organize our Barbadian community here, and I look forward to working with you all as we seek how to best to mark that significant achievement for us as a nation. But tonight it is to the panel. I will thank the National Council again for organizing this, and thank you for your participation in what I think will be a delightful evening. Thanks again, and enjoy.
Thank you, High Commissioner. And now we're here for the real deal now. And the lady with the big bell, Mrs. Arlene Devonish, will now take the stage. She's all yours.
Good evening and welcome to you all. And for those of you for whom it's your first time, what Tyrone is referring to, if you're at the back, is I am the moderator for this evening, and I do possess a rather large bell because I know the Bajans like to talk and I know they've got a lot of information that they want to share, but it is my job this evening to keep everything running to time. So we have 5 amazing speakers for you this evening. What I'm going to do is just do a name call of those speakers. So as I do that, if they could just give a little nod or a little wave, and then as each speaker comes up this evening, I will do a further introduction for you. So we have Dalton McConney, MBE. We have Marva Rollins. We have Mr. Michael Lewis. We have Cheryl L. And we have Jenna Marshall. And just for a bit of background, particularly for people who are joining us on live stream this evening, just to give you a little bit of background and context to the talk this evening. It's talking about the journey from Barbados to the UK, and for some people, the journey back. And I guess the bulk of this journey started in the 1950s, where Barbados perceived that they had population pressure, and so in liaison with the UK started then to arrange for people from Barbados to migrate over to the UK to work. In the early days it was mainly in transportation and healthcare, and in that first migration there are about 27,000 people that left the island. And that had been the biggest migration since the 1900s, where 45,000 people left to go to Panama. Since between 1948 and 1973, it's just over 500,000 people, 550,000 people have left the island of Barbados, which represents about 12% of the population. So that's a very big number. And what we're talking about here today is what's the impact of that? And the overarching question for tonight, which we'll be throwing open to the floor as well, is what can we do to engage that 3rd and 4th generation of Bajans that live in the UK so that we keep those links and those connections alive? Because that's a really big part of keeping the culture and keeping the heritage. And one of the things that's also happening tonight as a result of this panel, and I've been chairing this, Tyrone has invited me for the past 3 years to chair this event, and I think it's the first time I've seen on the remit that the result of our conversation here today is hopefully to also get some practical steps of what we can do to engage that 3rd and 4th generation, and those will become a written document that comes back here to the Barbados High Commission and is also then sent to the Barbados government. So I'm very excited to be part of that debate and part of that conversation, because I was born here, so I'm that first generation that was born here, but I've got nieces, I've got nephews, and I'm sure there'll be, the generations will continue. So this evening, what we're going to do, the speakers have all got 7 minutes. That is not a long time. I really appreciate that. I know that. I've already had people coming up and say, how do I fit 55 years into 7 minutes? And I know it's a tall order, but I am going to have to keep to time. And then once we've heard from each of our panelists, What we will then do is throw it open to the floor, and we will be taking your questions, we'll be taking your observations, we will be taking your thoughts. So that's a little bit of context for this evening. Now, the running order has been slightly different. There is food, I know you can smell the food. And if you're hungry, please feel free to have the food. But we're drawing this to a close at around 9 p.m. this evening, and there will also be time at the end of the evening to enjoy the Bajan Fair. And please make sure, whoever is watching the food, I want some sauce and I want some sweetbread. So can you please make sure there's something left, because I cannot leave the table. So without further ado, what we're going to do now is we are going to introduce our first speaker, who is Dalton M. McConney. Dalton is a retired Chief Inspector of the Metropolitan Police. He was born and educated in Barbados. He migrated here to the United Kingdom in 1960, originally kind of coming in, working for London Transport, as was the case for many people coming into the island, and then moving into the Metropolitan Police Force. In 1994, he was awarded an MBE. Congratulations. And then in the year 2000, he also was awarded the Queen's Police Medal for distinguished service to the police force. And he is the patron of several organisations and is very active in helping to keep the community alive. So can you please welcome Dalton to the stage?
Thank you and good evening all.
Good evening.
I was not supposed to be first, Marva was, but they fitted me in here. Now, I left Barbados in 1960, but my first job on leaving school, and I'm a proud Modernite, was to work as a proofreader for the Barbados Advocate for 1 year, and then I moved to the government printing office because every Barbadian wanted to be in the public service. So I joined there. And a group of us went to lunch one day. We heard that London Transport were recruiting people via the Barbados government to come to London and contribute to work in this country. I put my name down. We just did it for a joke. Then we got a call to say, come for an interview. We passed the interview, and we weren't given a date. We were told we would be contacted. I made arrangements with my boss at the government printing office, and he made arrangements with the people over at government headquarters so that my money could be made available when I left Barbados. I never got it because I left Barbados very suddenly. Actually, I waved goodbye to my girlfriend as I was leaving, going to the plane. And I left there on the 30th of July 1940 when I was 20 years old. I arrived in the United Kingdom on the 15th of July, which was on the Sunday after the most horrific flight. We went to Barbuda for refueling, and then from there to Gander. We went into the storm on the way to Barbuda and the storm on the way out from Barbuda to Gander. And one of my friends, incidentally, he's now gone back to Barbados, he used every sick bag on the aircraft. We arrived in London on the Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, Gatwick Airport, and it was a day very similar to today. It was drizzling, it was cold by Barbadian standards, and I wondered what the hell I'd let myself in for. A coach picked us up from the airport, and we were taken to an address which none of us knew where we were going. When we got to that address, 3 names were called, and you were told to grab your cases and leave the bus. And we went in, we got a reception by the people who were receiving us. They were quite hospitable. They were Jamaicans, because only Jamaicans had property at that time. My horror was, after the introduction, I was shown to my room, and there was 4 beds in the room, and apparently one of those was mine. I'd never lived like this before. I always had my own room at home, and these were people I knew not of. And I was told to be ready by 7 o'clock on Monday morning to be picked up, to be taken to Chiswick to learn to be a conductor, because they taught you on a funny little machine how to take tickets and take people's money, etc. Having completed the introduction course there, I was posted to Wandsworth Bus Garage, and I worked there for a while as a conductor, and then I trained to be a driver. And working for London Transport, because there were no isms in those days, there was no legislation that control the isms, and I think you know what I mean when I say the ism, racism, sexism, ageism, any of those isms. And I experienced my first bit of racism by London Transport. I'll tell you about it later on, but I left the bus inspector and a busload of people in Kensington High Street, and I got in the cab and I went home. And I never drove a London Transport bus after that, neither did I work for London Transport. Because in those days, you could get rubbish jobs, they were 2 a penny. I came back the Friday, collected my wages, got the Wandsworth Bar News, applied for a job, and got the job and started on the Monday morning. I waived my right to pay, gave them a week's pay, they gave me a week's pay, and I started on the Monday with another company, driving again, because they were only jobs we could take. 2 weeks after I was working for this firm, all the drivers left that firm because another company had taken over, and they hadn't given them any pensions, any money, anything, because that's how they treated people in those days, as some of you well recognize. Anyhow, I stayed there for a while. I was given the opportunity to learn to be a dry cleaner and to run the dry cleaning department. And for those of you who don't believe me, I'll show you my bit of paper. I have it documented that I'm a professional dry cleaner. Hence, okay. And I still have that bit of paper. I worked for this company for a short while, and then I moved from there in a managerial post to Sketchley's. I'm rushing through this because I have 7 minutes. In 1976, at the grand age of 36, I joined the Metropolitan Police Service. I went to Hendon. I nearly said heaven. I'm in good company here. I went to Hendon and I trained to be a police officer. I was 36 years old. All the guys around me were 17, 18, and 19 years old. And I concentrated on my work. I did extremely well at Hendon. And on leaving Hendon, I was posted to Battersea Police Station. I was the first black man in this area, that is Battersea, to wear the uniform. And I can assure you that I saw many opportunities for people to have crashes, because all people were driving along and saw a black man wearing a uniform. They're all looking. And there were screeches of brakes as people were running into the back of each other. So I tried to walk on the back streets, and I can tell you some funny stories about my time there. But I realized that a sense of humor was great to be within the police service. I then sat and passed the sergeant's exam because I was given special permission to do the sergeant's exam after 3 years service, because I've done so well in my probationary period. Actually, I came first. I might as well blow my own trumpet. The commander gave me permission to do the exam. I could not benefit from the special course because there was 3 criteria. One, you had to be under 30. I was not. I was 36. And remember, there was no isms in those days. I had under 5 years service because I'd only just joined and I had passed it after 3 years. And the last part of that was that you had to come within the first 100 of the sergeant's exam. I came third in the exam. My commander recommended that I be given the opportunity. That the assistant commissioner at the time said no. He said there were hundreds of people in the Met ready to be promoted. He was lying. However, the commander made me a permanent acting police sergeant. I was one of the first people to wear two stripes because it was never done. And I wore 2 stripes for 2 years. And on my fifth anniversary 5-year service, I was made sergeant and posted to Cheryl Road in Belgravia. Wonderful posting, did absolutely nothing because there were no problems there. I was then selected to go to Hendon to be a recruit instructor, and this was part of the slowing down process, and maybe later on I can tell you all about that, because I did experience racism within the force.
Just to say, got a minute left?
A minute left.
Yeah.
It took half a minute to say that. I wasn't... There was a slowing down process. I was posted to Hendon and I didn't apply for it. I went to Hendon, I became a recruit instructor, and just as soon as I finished that process, I wanted to sit the inspector's exam. They said, no, we're sending you to Garlick College to learn to be an instructor tutor. And I have a piece of paper to prove that I can train in further education as well. Barbie, you know all about this. So I have that piece of paper as well. After that, I did a year sabbatical. I returned to Hendon Police College just as the Policing Criminal Evidence Act came into being, the piece of legislation that stood policing on its head. It changed the way that we did things that gave you your rights as individuals. I was, surprise, posted to Brixton Police Station, and that's a whole history. But just suffice to say that Dorcas Howe, who was a local resident of Brixton, saw a total difference to the way things were done at Brixton with one black man. And Channel 4 followed me and did a fly on the wall program, which they broadcast over 2 weeks. I left Brixton Police Station on promotion. Again, they did a petition that said I couldn't go from there. The governor promised that I could go back because they never promoted you and leave you at the same station. And okay, my 30 seconds.
Your 30
right, okay. And the singers got more time, didn't they? Right, still on my half a minute. Right. And I went down to Bromley, hated every minute of it, loved Brixton. I absolutely was livid when they posted me to Brixton, but I absolutely loved it. I became an honorary Jamaican. I did some incredible things down there. I did policing like you've never seen policing. You can do with me in America at this present time, because that's what it's all about. It's about treating people properly. And the people of Brixton recommended me for the MBE. Okay, they're the ones who did it. And I retired from the police service in 2000. Again, I was awarded, this is the first time that the Met recognized, I got a few commendations as well, but they gave me the Queen's Police Medal in recognition of what they call a distinguished police service. Thank you very much.
And I know we can listen to all of these speakers all night in their own right, and you will get more opportunity to hear from them in the panel as well. So our next speaker is Marva Rollins. She is an educator and has been in education for 28 years, 20 of those in headship. She has also got a Bachelor of Education and an MA in Education. She is the head teacher of her own school, and they recently received an excellent from Ofsted. And having worked as a management consultant and a coach within Ofsted, I know how meticulous they are, so congratulations on that. That is quite an achievement. One of the things that she is committed to doing is working with children in inner cities to enable them to excel in everything that they are doing. She's also very active in the community, everything from working with sickle cell charities right through to working with BME teachers to ensure that they have a smoother path. So if you could please put your hands together for our next speaker.
Good evening, friends and colleagues and everyone. My story is not going to this one, daughter. My story is going to be a bit sad, actually. And I'm going to start by paying tribute to my parents' generation. That's anyone here who's 80 plus, because my mum is 88 next month. And I'm paying tribute for the work that they did in the 50s. That's when my parents arrived. And I've often wondered how they survived. How they survived and supported themselves here, sent money back home for their children, and still somehow my parents always seem to have £1 in their pockets. So my tribute is to that generation. I have so much respect and admiration for that group of people because they have framed who I am. So my name is Marva Hurst. Let's go back to who I really am. My father was Franklin Hurst and my mother is Myrtle Hurst. I'm a Hurst from Walker St Andrew. Or Belle Plaine. The Hursts were from Belle Plaine, the Jordans from Walkers. Yeah. And my journey is one of what I call disconnection and reconnection. My parents came here in the 50s, Dad in 57, Mum in 59, leaving 4 of us at home. And originally there were 5 of us at home, and sadly my brother died when he was quite young. But I came here with my brothers and my sister in 1964 when I was 12. And I have to say, I did not recognize my parents. Anyone here of my generation will remember not seeing a parent for 5 or 10 years when you're so little. And if you go for 5 or 7 years at that age, it is a very tricky time. And it's an amazing time. And what we have to understand is that we think our parents left. My uncles left, my aunties left, my friends left. That's the story of my generation. And I actually think that no one has ever addressed the trauma that those children went through. So you can pray at that one. But I went to Belle Plaine Girls' School, and then I went to the Allen School very briefly before my parents brought me over. I think that was much to my grandparents' relief. They'd brought up 8 children. Did they really need to bring up another 4? But again, I respect my grandparents, because again, in that generation, grandparents, aunties and uncles took on the care of children, not for a day, not for a year, 5 years and 10 years. And what an amazing group of people they are. So if I don't talk about myself, I'm talking about those who matter. When I arrived, I went to a secondary school. My parents thought that all secondary schools would be good, so they sent us to a secondary school in Ilford. There was one black girl there, and that black girl went to Bell Plain School when I was there. So the only other black child in the school I knew, her name is Julie Griffith, and if you know Alvin Griffith, it's Alvin's sister Julie. That was in my school. In the 60s, we often talk about black children underachieving. In the 60s, every working class child underachieved. So I went to a school where children might go and work in Lions or somewhere like that, if you have to be old enough to know what Lions is. But I was told that I was bright enough to work in an office, and 20 years later, I'm still working in an office. I've lost my track here. But that secondary school was in Ilford, and over time, lots of black kids joined us. But in terms of my further journey, if we roll on a few years, had 3 sons and a dodgy marriage, but we sorted that out. And then I went to study. I went to study at the age of 31, but I went to study as a result of 2 very key organizations in my life. One was Sickle Cell. We started the Sickle Cell Society. Dr. Elizabeth Anyuanyu trained us to go out there and fight for our people who were suffering. And then we started ELBO, East London Black Women Organisation. And those 2 groups gave me the strength to move forward from what really was a very tough time. And I studied and I went into teaching. And what I realized in teaching is that all the skills I had picked up in the community were very relevant to teaching. And after 8 years in teaching, I became a head teacher. And at the time, I didn't know any other black head teachers. So can I just stand here and say, lots of white people helped me on my journey. They encouraged me, they pushed me for whatever reason, and they pushed me forward. Today, I support black leaders. That is my absolute passion. I support anyone who's going to give our children a good deal. But in particular, I support future black leaders, and I support them when they get there, because it is so easy to slip. And when you slip as a black leader, you're not judged as a leader, you're judged as a black leader. So that's where I spend most of my time. And I do a lot of interview skills, I do a lot of training. I don't do a lot in the community. The community wore me out. NACA wore me out. See, David and Nigel, it was their fault. Sickle Cell wore me out. Elbow wore me out. But I'm very pleased to be where I am today. I am past retirement age, but I absolutely love what I do. When you work in the inner cities and you work with black children, it's important to have someone who's committed to those children. And I have a team who are absolutely committed to giving the children in Edmonton a great deal. And you know, we have lots of visitors at our school. So it's more than me. I'm part of a group of early 60s children who were very traumatized. And I always say, we didn't need racism. We had enough to deal with. We were trying to reconnect with these strangers who we had to call mum and dad, disconnect from grandparents who had looked after her for all those years. And you know, when back in the 60s they kept saying, why do you keep sending your black people, your mad people back home? Those people weren't mad, they were just sad. They were sad because they had left their children, they left their mums, they left their brothers. There was so much disconnection. So I'm really pleased that my mum is still here. My parents chose not to go back. And I'm very pleased they chose not to go back, because they held us together. They held my children and my nieces and nephews together. And they've enabled us to hold our grandchildren together, because we now have a generation of people who can, my grandchildren know their great-grandmother. I knew my great-grandmother, but they know their great-grandmother. And that lineage is so important. And I know we're here tonight to talk about how to help, look at how to get the youngest ones to connect to Barbados. But even my connection to Barbados is not as it was. The aunt that I went home to visit often died a few years ago. She was my connection to Barbados. Because so many of my aunts and uncles came to England or went to America. And sadly, she just died. She just got up one morning, dropped dead, and she died. And that was my connection. So I do go home. I go home every other year. And the year in between, I try to go somewhere I've never been before in the world. But I'm getting to the point now where I don't even feel I want to go anywhere else in the world, because how many more temples and mosques and caves and whatever do we need to see? And it all connects in your head in a strange sort of way. Can I thank Tyrone for inviting me here? I have a very long story. If you have an hour, I can tell you my long story. But it is a story of overcoming real sadness, yeah? Overcoming real distress and digging deep and remembering. We must never forget where we come from. It's my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my grandfather, those gentle people who looked after me on behalf of my parents, who have me standing here tonight. Friends, fellow Bajans, that's me.
Oh, amazing. And our next speaker for tonight is Michael Lewis. And Michael Lewis was born in Black Rock in Barbados.
Never did that for St Andrew.
And he was educated at St Stephen's School. Got a few people doing the... He migrated to the UK in 1966 and became an engineer working for British Telecom. Once he had had enough of being outside and climbing the poles, he decided to go back into education and then got into management. He then also started to devote himself to looking at what makes people successful and moving in those circles so that he could then go back and contribute to his community. So another amazing story coming up. Please put your hands together for Michael.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Evening.
Okay, before I start my story, I think it is important that I set the scene. The scene's got to be set so you can see the reasons why my mum brought us to England. So my story starts back in Barbados in the 1930s. My mum was born into a very poor family, working the land to survive. She had 3 sisters and 1 brother, and from an early age she learned the art of the good work ethic. Fast forward 20 or so years, where she met my dad, 3 children later, struggling to make ends meet. My dad worked in the local timber yard, and my mum did whatever she could to bring in some extra cash. My mum had a business head, but my dad was quite happily just bringing his weekly wage home. She tried to start a business, running a small shop, but my dad insisted it had to sell rum. That was the start of and the end of the business and the relationship. My mum moved to England, to the UK, and left me and my 2 brothers before that. My dad wasn't that keen on school, so most of the time he was left to our own devices. But my mum kept in touch on birthdays, at Christmas, and she visited Barbados whenever she could. On one visit, she saw the state that we were in and thought she could do better for us, and decided to send for us to join her in the UK. Her plans of just staying in Barbados, staying in the UK for 5 years, had to be put on hold. As you know, life takes over. On the 26th of June, 1966, all 3 of us arrived in the UK. I was 9 at the time, my older brother 11, and my younger brother was 7. My mum rented a house in Kensal Green in Harlesden, and all was great. I remember playing football in the streets with some white kids, and we was playing football, and one of the mums called the kids in for dinner, and one of the guys said, "I'll be in a minute." 30 minutes later he went in, and I thought, it's great here, you don't have to listen to your parents when they call. So I tried it, and I got a slap on the back of the head.
Illegal in those days.
Now, the fact that we arrived in June, we had to wait till September before we could start school. So every day we spent in the local football, in the local parks, and then we went swimming every day. So by the end of summer, we were excellent swimmers. I remember my first day at school. It was very cold. And in those days, there was about 4 foot of central heating pipe that ran outside. So all the black kids would be hanging onto this pipe because they were cold, and that was the only bit of warmth that they could find until the bell went. When the teacher came into the room, I stood up. It's something that we do normally in Barbados. I was laughed at. Then automatically, when she was calling the register and she called my name, I stood up again. I was laughed at by the guys, by the rest of the pupils. At lunchtime, I was surrounded by a group of white kids, and they asked me, am I a good fighter? I thought, it's my first day at school, and I'm already faced confrontation. Now, we need to fast forward to 1976, where I met my wife, Joyce. Instantly, I knew that we were meant to be together for life. As we courted over the next few years, we soon realized that we wanted the same things out of life. We used to visit family and friends on both sides of the family, and we used to hear them keep saying, I'm going to do this when I retire, I'm going to do that when I retire. Unfortunately, a lot of them never reach retirement, and a lot of them never get a chance to realize their dreams. This taught us a valuable lesson. We said, this is not going to happen to us. And we vowed it would never happen, and we started making plans to retire at that very early age. We decided to work hard in our 20s so that we could retire in our 50s. We were working very good jobs with very good employers at those times. Joyce was with the NHS and I was with British Telecom. But we was always looking for something to do more. We said, what else can we do to increase our income? We were looking all the time. In 1994, we was exposed to an organization called GTS, Group Training Systems. We had access to very successful people, and the training system taught us success habits. The books taught us not to just to rely on your income from your job for your financial future, but it taught us how to develop different income streams. This was exactly what we was looking for, and we worked the business hard for 10 years and did everything that we were taught. We were laughed at by family, friends, and people at work, but we knew it was right for us. 10 years later, the business collapsed. We was all back to square one, but the teaching from the books kept us positive. We kept focused on building income streams alongside our normal jobs. And in 2009, I walked away from my job. 5 months later, Joyce walked away from hers. We are currently living our dream. We are now fortunate enough to spend time between the Caribbean and the UK, between Barbados, Grenada, and the UK. We have gone full circle. One day, we would like to retire to the Caribbean. We are in the process of encouraging the third and fourth generations to do the same. I think it's very important to encourage the third and fourth generations so that they can develop an interest in the Caribbean. It starts with us. If you are passionate about Barbados, that helps. My mum wasn't. She said to me she'd known some very hard times in Barbados and she cannot see herself retiring there. That could have tainted my view.
We've got 1 minute left. Sorry, I hit that.
I can only tell you what we did and that has worked for us. From an early age, we took our daughters to Barbados and to the Caribbean so that they can get a feel for it. Because remember, we're the last ones that were born in Barbados, so we have an emotional connection. So it's down to us to take our children as often as they can, so they can see their roots, see exactly where you've been to. My daughter actually stood in the same schoolyard that I've been to, so she got photographs of where I was brought up and where I went to school, and I think that's very, very important. I know in today's present times it's logistically and it's financially challenging, but I think it is very important for their future and the future of the Caribbean. This is a gradual process. Over the years, they will soon get a liking for the place. And Joyce and I, that's what Joyce and I did. And our daughters, when she got have her kids, she's now taking her kids to Barbados. And my grandson, age 7, the 4th generation, spent 2 weeks of his summer holiday in Barbados. And when it was time for his mom to bring him back, he says, "Mom, do we have to go?" So that emotional connection on the 4th generation has started.
And our next speaker is Cheryl L. Cheryl is the founder of Biz Magazine. She is a project manager and also has been a radio and TV presenter for the past 8 years. She is again passionate about the community. She is a volunteer for the Windrush Foundation. She is a treasurer of the African Heritage Foundation, and she is passionate about health and well-being. She was born in the UK, educated in Boston, and I noticed in her biography she also says something about being uneducated in the UK, so I'm also intrigued to hear about that. So please put your hands together for Cheryl.
Good evening all. Can you all hear me okay? Good. I've got a slightly different approach to everybody else. Sorry, Tyrone. But I'll just carry on as normal anyway. The Emancipation Act of 1833 emancipated Barbados in 1838. I'm sure you all know your history, so this is just to kind of bring the conversation into context. And gave birth to the Caribbean family as we know it now. And this is a new breed of genetically modified people who are now allowed to make families of their own choosing. And at emancipation in Barbados, there were 83,000 landless free blacks at the brink of building a nation. So if you look at today, 176 years later, this is how far we've come. And so I kind of wanted to look at the bigger journey, not just my own personal little journey. So 176 years later, after emancipation, we find Bajans all over the diaspora, and through the movement of people, our people, Barbados people, through World War I, World War II, and the Panama Canal, and where my story begins in my parents coming in and the rebuilding of the empire. And I think that many of us have sort of started that journey. So Barbados has continually been drained of its people, but they have gone looking and seeking for work, as my parents did. Today, over 100,000 Barbadians live in the diaspora. 21,000 of those are here in the UK. But in 1966, the year of independence, 9 months before independence, I was born. So I like to think that I kind of, being born, gave birth to independence, but anyway. Born in Ipswich, as I said, yeah, but I grew up in Boston, where I was educated very well, and was actually one of the hothouse children. So we weren't all undereducated. Some of us did come along and were quite bright. But on returning to the UK, but before I could come back to the UK, in Boston, what happened, where I was at school, I was the only black child in my school and one other family. And in the early 70s, I don't know how many of you are aware of the history in America, but what they did was bus children from one school to another to mix up the racial profile of the schools. So my school randomly picked names, and as it happened, my name randomly got picked to go from my all-white school to an all-black school, which was actually, to be honest, quite traumatic. So it's quite an early journey, all the way early in the morning on the bus to another school where nobody knows you. And I think I lasted about 2 days, so my mum had to come and get me out of the toilet. So that's to give you the idea of the 70s America at the time. In the late 70s, returned to the UK, bright and all this, and I felt I was uneducated now by coming to school in Ipswich. I don't know how many people know Ipswich, but I think Ipswich is quite different to London in its way. And there at school was where I actually kind of was confronted with my first ever experience of racism. And most, I have to put my hand on heart and say, most of the racism actually came from the black girls at school. And in a small town, I think it's probably one of those things where this self-hatred thing is a way of survival. So there's this survival thing going on, and I kind of look at the mental health of people quite a lot, and through our journeys I kind of think, where is this behaviour all coming from? But to top that off as well, not only was there pressure from the children and the name calling, and of course I'm there with an American accent looking quite different as well. So I stand out. I'm not just your usual black girl at the school, and I stand out. And the racism also came from the teachers. But 20 years later, now raising my own children in the same schools, in the same school system in Ipswich, I'm aghast at the fact that the racial problems that I faced in the 70s are still there for my children. You know, that's quite a breathtaking moment when you think of all the race relations and the laws and things that we had, that my children still have to have the same journey that I had. So I wonder how far we really have progressed when we think about being allowed to progress. And I want to say that Amos Wilson, he's a great writer. If you haven't looked it up, look him up, look at his books, he's a brilliant man. He says it takes 4 generations to right a wrong in a family. So if you have issues with your mother or your father, the way you act happens, you pass it on to your children. It takes 4 generations to right that wrong. So the question, will Barbados be ready at 50 for the next 50 years, is an important question. Both my parents are from Barbados, and both my children's parents are from Barbados, but I can't guarantee that my children will marry and produce Bajans. So I think that this is a question that the Commission might want to look at, or might want to face, because what will the Barbados diaspora look like in 50 years' time? Who will the Commission serve, and how is a question I kind of think, you know, what will we look like if we're sort of not necessarily being born in Barbados, not necessarily marrying Barbados, you know, what will that look like? So now we've just looked ahead, so now let's look at now. I consider myself to be very patriotic, and I find it hard to respect my love being Barbados, when my love is kind of getting on a bit bad, really, because I find that Barbados can be a bit lazy when dealing with things like administration matters, passports and citizenship. And now I'm going to kind of like rock the boat now, but this is, you know, the question was asked, the experience of how we feel. And so, you know, let's be honest, okay? And now let's look at property management, which my dad passed away last year. And so this is kind of a new thing to me. My mum's always had the issues with her property, but on my dad's side, when I'm now the eldest child, I'm having to deal with this. And I'm thinking that there's a lot of time and money being wasted and fleeced by well-meaning, upstanding members of the community and bona fide businesses and lawyers. And I think it's taking, it's kind of getting to the point where we probably need to look at that as a diaspora. I'm one of these people who doesn't like to just kind of say things without having a solution. So I have got solutions, and I'll put those forward now. The first being to make a committee of sorts. And these things may have already been done. I may not know about it, because I've only lived in London for a year now, and I'm only beginning to sort of know a few of you. So hi everybody, I'm new to London, be nice to me. But at the same time, so these ideas may have already been done, but if they haven't, I'd like to put them forward. Is to have a committee, a Barbados committee for land and property owners, where we get together and share ideas, pool resources, and look at best practice as to how we can do it. And instead of all doing it individually, we kind of come together as groups and look at this. And I think with the support and everything behind us, we could probably, you know, look at this. And my second action would be to address the sense of belonging. Not just my own sense of belonging, but the sense of belonging for young people. And I think I've raised my children to be quite Bajan. I think they are proud Bajans. But at the same time, they still feel quite British. They've been to Barbados, they know what it is, but it's a place that they go and have to come back. And my son, actually, when he was young, cried when at the airport. He didn't want to come back, but he's back. But the other thing I'd like to put to the Commission is a young commission, a youth commission group. And I've worked in the past, so I can help. All of these ideas I'm putting forward, I can actually volunteer my help. I've worked with young people, and I've done parliamentary commissions and parliamentary outreach for young people, and I think that the Commission would probably work quite well if they involved and actually had a High Commissioner, a High Youth Commissioner as well. So there, I've got like a minute left, but they're the ideas, and I have many more, so maybe they'll come out in the question time, but that's kind of what I wanted to sort of address today, so thank you for this.
And our final speaker for this evening, before we open the floor for your questions, for your thoughts and for your input, is Jenna Marshall. Now, Jenna is an educator, and she is, this is quite a mouthful, she's an alumni of the British Federation of Women's Graduates. She's also the first ever Anglophile to be a recipient of the Royal Netherlands Institute of Southeast Asian and Caribbean Studies, and she's currently undertaking her doctoral research at the University of London, and she's exploring the impact of civil, political and economic factors in the small island developing states. So please put your hands together for our final panelist.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Good night. Okay, well, I'll just give a little background about me. Educated at Goodens Private, which no longer exists. Secondary school at the St. Michael's School. St. Michael's? From St. Michael's, went on to Barbados Community College. From there, recipient of the Barbados exhibition, did my undergraduate at York University in Toronto. And then I decided to do my master's at the University of London, where I am also currently undergoing my doctoral research. Currently at the University of London, I am the only black, or actually I'm the only person of colour who teaches at in the department, or in the entire school. And I try to use my position teaching international relations, which has always been a very predominantly white, male-centric, very Western discipline, and try to use what I consider to be subjugated or knowledges in order for us to examine questions of global policy from a perspective other than the perspective of the West, putting a Caribbean understanding of the international. And I think that's really important for my students, who most are of European background. So that's something really important. But given that we are here to celebrate independence, I thought it would be fitting to speak or to recite a poem by Kamel Brathwaite on the question of migration. And this poem is entitled "The Pathless, Harbourless Spade." Never seen a man travel more lands than this poor, pathless, harbourless spade. So you have seen them with their cardboard grips, felt hats, rain cloaks, the women with their plain or purple tinted coats, hiding their fattening hips. These are the immigrants on seaport quays, at airports, anywhere there is a ship or train, swift motor car or jet to travel faster than the breeze. You see them gathered, passports stamped, their travel papers wrapped in old disused newspaper, lining their patient queues. To where? They do not know. Canada, the Mississippi, Plainfields, Florida, or on to dock at hissing smoke block Glasgow. Where do they go? They do not know. Seeking a job, they settle for the very best the agent has to offer. Jabbing a neighbour out of work for 4 bob, less a week. What do they hope for? What fine were these New World mariners, Columbus cursing Kaffirs? What Cathar shores for them are gleaming, golden? What magic keys they carry to unlock? What gold in dragon doors? Yes, never seen a man travel more lands than this poor, pathless, harbourless spade. And for me, this poem by Kamau Brathwaite speaks to migration being something which has always been an issue for us in the Caribbean and for us here in the diaspora. And one of the ways, oh, by the way, my presentation is quite short, but one of the ways I think that we can look to have deeper links with third and fourth generation is through the arts and exposing them to the works of the George Lamons and the Kamau Brathwaites. And these are ways in which children as young as 5 or for teenagers to find ways to relate back to Barbados and to the Caribbean in very accessible ways. You don't need a plane ticket, yeah? And that's my contribution tonight. Thank you.
Oh, I thought you were heading to the front. I just thought I'd wait and see where you end up. Well, I have to say, we are beautifully on time this evening, so thank you so much to the panellists for allowing me to rush you a little bit. And this now affords us some time for the debate. One of the things I've realised is that I didn't introduce myself. I almost feel like, because I've been here for the last 3 years, like, yeah, they know who I am. But I recognise also we've got the live stream and that sort of thing. So just to backtrack from there a little bit of myself and what brings me here. I was born in the UK. I was educated in the UK. My parents were part of that 27,000 people that came across in the 1960s. I was lucky enough, I think, to be in South London. We lived in Clapham, we lived in Vauxhall, down the road from Brixton. So it felt as though I had come into and grew up in a black community. In terms of what I do now, it's very different to what I thought I would be doing. I followed the traditional route because your parents say get a good education, which I did. I did a business studies degree, I did a postgraduate marketing diploma, and I decided I would be an accountant because I believed, because I was very quiet and very shy and lacking in confidence and low in self-esteem, and I got it into my head that when you're an accountant, you don't have to speak to people. I realised pretty quickly as I started the ACCA that a good accountant would go out and communicate. And so I just ended up, a little bit like we've heard this evening, I ended up on a personal development training purely to just try and help me to communicate, because I couldn't even talk to my own family. And as you can see now, the problem is probably shutting me up as opposed to talking. But it made me realise that you do not have to be hemmed in by your background, because I did grow up on a council estate. There was the isms going around, and I've met people since in the work that I do as a consultant and as a corporate trainer and also working in schools that people often believe when they've been born here, if you are on a council estate, if you've had that kind of upbringing, if you are an import into the country that you live in, then your choices are limited. And my parents instilled in me that that is not the case. I've got a sister who's a lawyer, I've got another one who's an accountant, I've got another one who's in retail management. And so for me, one of the things that I love doing when I'm coaching and when I'm training and even in my therapeutic work, it is working with people to show them that your past and whatever you perceive your background to be does not have to dictate where you are, and it doesn't have to dictate your future. And that's the thing I've been passionate about since. When I say to people I'm a hypnotherapist, it frightens them slightly, but don't worry, I'm not hypnotising anyone tonight. But that's the thing I'm really passionate about, because I want to show people that anything is possible. So in terms of the rest of this evening, what we're going to do is now we're going to open it up, and also panel members, just to let you know that as we get towards the end of the evening, I'm also going to come back to you guys with the question of, what would you say, even if it was just 2 or 3 things, what are some of the practical things that you believe can be done to engage with that 3rd or 4th generation? We've already had a couple put forward just now, so just be kind of thinking on that one. I'll get you to summarise with that. But we're going to, I think there'll be microphones, if I'm correct, moving through the audience. I would ask you to be swift with your question and with your statement. And then if you're directing it to a particular panel member, feel free to do that. or the panel member that feels it's most appropriate for them can respond to that. So do we have our first question from the floor? Anyone, anything you wanted to ask, anything you wanted to contribute, or any views or ideas you wanted to put forward? Please raise your hand so that we can see where you are located, and then the microphone will come to you. This is a very quiet audience tonight. Normally people are fighting for that microphone. This is true. We haven't eaten as yet. We haven't eaten as yet. There we go.
Yeah, hello? Yeah. There is an organization called the Separation and Reunion Forum, and it was founded by a woman. She was actually born in Barbados, Dr. Elaine Arnold, but brought up partly in Trinidad for very interesting reasons, which I won't go into now. But she did some research on separation. It started off looking at boys, Caribbean boys, who went into homes, and then she widened that research to look at mothers and daughters. And out of that has come this organization. So just saying that, and I do agree with you about the trauma of separation and the generational thing. And it's a brilliant organization. In fact, the annual conference is happening on the 28th of November. Thank you. I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Thank you. Who is next? Please raise your hand so that Tyrone can identify you. Tyrone, just here in the front. Gentleman with the blue tip.
Nigel Holligan. Dalton, you alluded to, obviously, the trailblazing that you did within the Metropolitan Police. Given the problems that currently pervade in that institution, we know what was said about the racial problems that existed. Is there any consultation? Do you actually have any involvement still? Do they contact you, possibly to discuss how they can improve relationships with the black community?
They don't even consult with themselves. Is this working? No, I did some consultancies, you well know, for the Metropolitan Police. I'm still in contact with people. I am happily retired. I give counsel where counsel is needed, but I do it in a very low profile way. I don't ever want to be high profile. My next birthday, I get my free television license. I think I have earned it. Yes? But I do an awful lot within our community still. That is my focus now. But I would say one of the things that's caused us the problem with the Metropolitan Police, and I've been a critic from within. I've always done it from within. The training has stopped. The supervision has stopped because those things cost money. The European Human Rights Act has stopped people from supervising, because if you have on your CV that you have a complaint for bullying or for supervising properly, that is the end of your career. So people just sit back and let things happen. No one is prepared to take responsibility for anything. So that is where we are. So I concentrate most of mine now on getting young people to understand, because we have this nonsense where people think that they can do as they like, you know, because they have rights. We all have rights, but they have responsibilities as well. So the two have to be right, and that's where I concentrate my effort. But when I'm consulted, I give the advice that I tell them, but they can do whatever they want to do with that advice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
I don't want to ask a question, I don't know.
They want to eat.
Are you holding the mic at someone, or are you?
I'm hoping that you told me to give it to someone.
Oh, well, I've just said next question, so if you could raise your hand so that Tyrone can see where you are located. And also, if you have any suggestions about what we can do to engage that third and fourth generation, please also feel free to come forward with those. And do not be shy just because you're on live stream. Because I've been here for 3 years now. Normally we have 10 hands going up at once for that microphone. So this is your opportunity. Thank you.
Hello, Ron Belgrave. I run an organisation called Sankofa Televisual, and we brought over the first Barbadian TV series on British television last year, Keeping Up with the Joneses. We did the film in the cinema earlier this year too. And I was taking the film around the country and showing it Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham, etc. And we'd have Q&A sessions afterwards. Mostly it was an older audience, but sometimes there were some young people dragged there by their parents. And in the discussion I would ask them about their connection to Barbados and their connection to the Caribbean. And broadly speaking, they would say, they have none. And then we'd ask, well, do you want to have a connection? And broadly speaking, they would say, no. What they like is America, because America is exciting, and America is something you can kind of grab and hold on to. You know what America is. You see the baseball caps with NY, you know what America looks and feels like. And it seems to me that one of the issues for young people is that they don't really know what Caribbean culture looks and feels like, apart from maybe rice and peas on a Sunday and carnival once a year. And I think maybe us as the adults and even our parents' generation, maybe we didn't do enough to try and shape and define what the culture looks and feels like, because I see Asian young people, and especially now African young people, who are very proud of what they are and who they are, and they carry that around in a very visible way. Language, clothing, names, etc. And we've not really had those kind of things to hold on to. And my question really was, I forget your name, Ms. Marshall, the academic? Jenna Marshall, yeah. And you spoke about the arts, and I was just wondering how important you thought visual arts, particularly television and cinema, is in terms of conveying what culture looks like and helping young people to get excited about the culture you want them to buy into. Because the thing about TV especially is it's there all day, every day. And when you're seeing America all day, every day, that's what you want. If you never really see the Caribbean, it's too expensive to travel there with air passenger duty, you don't really get into it.
So he's asking about the impact also of visual media in terms of engaging.
No, I agree with you. I actually attended that movie screening at Stratford Picture House, so I was there. No, it's important. You touched on something really interesting, and this is a question of like identity and identity politics, and who are we as the Caribbean, and have we really articulated a vision of what we are in the Caribbean and who we are? Because until we've really established what it is, it's then difficult to pass it on to other generations in the Caribbean. But I think visual arts is really important, and TV and movies, film, because for someone of Caribbean heritage, they get to see their lives or the lives of their parents portrayed on TV, and they can at least, if not connect to the parlance or the terms of speech, they can at least connect to their parents, and they could possibly see themselves in the stories, or stories about their parents, if that makes sense. I don't know. But no, the visual arts is definitely a way in which we could look to incorporate third and fourth generations, but we also need to know what third and fourth generations are engaging in and what they want to see. So there has to be that effort put on both you seeking to convey to them a Caribbean vision, but also incorporating what they too want to see on TV and how they want to see themselves in film. Yeah?
Thank you. And Dalton, I actually have a question for you while it's on my mind, because I find myself standing here wondering, in terms of how you answered the last question, you may have even come across him. My uncle was Jeff Crawford, who was on the... Oh, I think, Jeff, they all know you. And he was on the Police Complaints Authority and was kind of a leading light in many ways. He, I think, with British Transport, helped them to put some of those isms to bed. So from what you have seen, would you say that things have moved on since Jeff's day? Or if he was still here, would he be facing the same issues?
I think he'd be facing worse issues today. Because, you see, I go back to this thing about training and supervision. Because in some you know, someone asked me tonight, why didn't I write my book? And I'll tell you why I didn't write the book. Every book has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an ending. And I have been the most, I only know honesty. Let me say this now, and as a policeman, I did honesty. I would have to tell it as it is. There'll be an awful lot of people that I hurt. I did what I had to do within the police service, and I did it. I challenged my governors. I'm sure they had doubts about my loyalty. I had no difficulty with that, because I walked a perfectly straight line. Can I tell you, I worked in the Bar of Lambeth for 11 years. I have never had a cup of tea in anyone's house. I've never even had a glass of water. I've always had a cup of tea before I left the station. I don't drink that much tea at any rate. But this was my principle. I gave no favors, I took none. But I explained things to people. Now, in Jeff's day, Jeff had fought, all the people had fought. We had our legislation at the time of in Jeff's time and beyond that, was based on this principle of reasonable grounds to suspect. Hear those words? It was sort of hairy-fairy rubbish. And they treated people abysmally. Now, I was posted to Brixton just after the second riots. I never knew what it was, what this word to be called a coconut was. A lady, she's now a priest, I'm the godfather to her child. She came after an incident that I dealt with. She said to me, I heard you were here, I heard all about you, and I thought you were a coconut. And I said, what do you mean? She says, black on the outside and white on the inside. Yes? Because that's how they see anyone that joined. I saw some terrible things, but I didn't go to the newspaper with them. I went to the governor, and I said, shut the door. I was fortunate at Brixton because I had a governor who was born in the borough of Lambeth. And he gave me the flexibility to go out and do things, but it was all based on good behavior. The training waned, the supervision waned. We saw people that jockey for position up the career ladder, and I sit night after night, I see them all crumbling. And Jeff would be appalled now to see that some of his hard work has gone to nothing really, because we have not learned from the experiences. I mentioned in my presentation about the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. You remember I said stood policing on its head. It changed the way that we did things. That is, those things came about by the efforts of people like Jeff, because we got legislation that made sure that us as individuals had rights. But those rights were to balance the police powers. When people have a warrant card in their pocket, they see themselves as being all-powerful, they can do anything, they have power over people's lives. Things will never change. And we are back to that today, because we scare people about terrorism and all these things, but when we're scaring people, we're still doing the bad things, because, you know, there's this thing about giving bad news when there's something that people's minds are distracted. So you don't know really what's going on because they're covering it with terrorism and all this other nonsense. So Jeff, a lot of work that he's done has got its, if you like, its cover in the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. And I would implore anyone to get a copy of the Codes of Practice and read it, so you're a benefit to do so. It goes along with the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. Stood policing on his head, and he was one of the people around at the time who helped in that process to get us where we are. But we've gone backwards, I might add.
Thank you. So we're going to take two more questions, and then we will throw it back to our panel in terms of looking at some of those practical steps. So Tyrone with the microphone, we have a gentleman here in the second row. If you just raise your hand again so Tyrone can see you. Thank you.
Turn it one time.
Hello, Eddie Griffin from Harrington. Now, I wasn't quite sure what to expect when I came here this evening, and I wasn't quite sure what the contributions would have been. However, of course, we have a miscellany of different views and opinions and experiences. But this question would be directed mostly at yourself, Dalton, partly because you've had longer experiences by virtue of the fact that you've probably been here a little bit longer than some of us. Now, given that you would have had a lot of negative experiences in the early days, can you say briefly how that impacted those, the racism that you would have encountered, how that impacted upon your self-esteem?
I think I mentioned when I was speaking earlier on that I personally never witnessed overt racism within the police service. I'm a pretty big guy and a pretty tough guy as well, and I don't think anyone had the real guts to look me in the eye and call me the black word and say something nasty. Some people just didn't do that. But there were lots of things that I knew that went on. There was a slowing down process to promotion. I should have been promoted like 10 years to different ranks. But every time that time came up, I was sidetracked to do something else, and this just went on and on and on. But I will tell you now that I did not experience racism as such within the community, because I realized that humor counters everything. Can I give you a couple of little examples to let you see what I mean? At Battersea, I was the first black policeman there, as I mentioned earlier on. One afternoon, or one evening, we'd just come on duty, and there was a little kid that came to the station, and he said that Mom had sent the call for the police because there was a bit of a disturbance with his mother and his neighbor. And my sergeant said to me, "Will you pop?" I was just around the road across the road from the police station. I went there and I saw the most enormous sized black woman, and she was really spitting fury because there was some nonsense with the kids. And in those days, all we did was give advice. We advised and referred. We say to people, you know, provided there was no physical things, we just give a bit of advice and refer them to their civil remedies. If there was violence, obviously we had to deal. And when I was speaking to the black lady, because you start with the person who complains, the other lady who was white, she came out and she said in a very loud voice to her son, she said, "You go down to the police station and you tell them to send me a white police officer. If she has a black one, I want a white one." And when he was gone, I said to I called the station and I said to the sergeant, I said, "Ignore the request you're going to get at the police station." I said, "I am dealing." When I finished giving the black lady, the advice, which is what we were supposed to do, I went and I knocked on her door, the white lady's door, and I said, "I gather there's been a dispute in your person that's involved in that." She says, "Perfectly hard, officer." She said, "I've sent down the station and they're going to send me a white police officer." I said, "Well, you're out of luck tonight, darling." I said, "Because we only got black ones on." And I was one. And she looked at me quite quizzically and she said, "Are you having me on?" I said, "I never have people on. I tell us it is." And she said to me, "You better come on in." And when I gave her the advice like I gave the other lady, she said, "Oh," she said, "are you going to take her side?" I said, "I don't take sides, because that is not my job to take sides. I investigate and I refer and betray." So humor is part of that process. I could go through a whole heap of funny stories, things that's going on, because that is how I found. That was my mechanism for dealing with the community. And if I tell you about what happened, some of the things that happened in Brixton, because you have to work. How many Jamaican people are in the audience tonight? Put your hands up. Don't be shy. Well, there. Well, I can always say, because you know, no, I'm not. It's nothing bad. But you know, Jamaican people do it their way. Yes. And some of the things that happened there, they would come into the station. I was a black man in the station. They didn't insult me. They insulted my white officers. They says, "There you are. We got a black governor now. Go on, tell me the things." Yeah. And they would wind police officers up. I had to stop that as well. I had to deal with that. They were dealing with it on the street because they rescued people who were arrested. I arrived on the scene. They said, "There you are. Now let him go. You know, the black man is here. Now he's in charge." Can't do that. If a person's been arrested, we have to deal with it. But you had to explain. And that's really what it's about. It's about patience. It's about taking time to deal with people as human beings. And if you do that, why should a black man be afraid of his own people? You've got to be crazy. They're all people. We speak the same language. I even learned to speak Jamaican.
Thank you. And is there a final question before we move that question back to the panel? Gentleman right at the back, where is the microphone at the moment? Because I can see Tyrone behind me. Oh, is it the young lady? Okay. Tyrone is just making his way. Okay, hello. This isn't really a question, but more of just like a sort of general statement, comment thing. It seems like quite a main issue today is kind of talking about how to engage young people with it and how to, you know, try and get them to be more interested in it. And I think, as a young person myself, because I'm 15, I think that you kind of need to show them how they can make a difference and how they can change what's going on, because a lot of the time when I hear about Barbados, I hear about like my grandparents talking about, well, talking about like different stories and their past and what was going on before, and like I didn't really take much interest in the place because it was just kind of like, well, it sounds like a really nice place. It doesn't seem like there's really many issues. And they were just kind of talking about it like that. And then I had gone there before, and then like it just seemed like a really nice place. It didn't really seem like, you know, there was much I could change. And then I went again recently, and like I did some research at home, and like I've been doing projects in school that kind of teach us about it. And you kind of realize that, well, yeah, there is more to it, and there is more that I, as a person, could do to change it and to help it. And I think that's an important way of showing people that, you know, this is how you can get involved with it. And I just thought that would be useful to share in case people didn't realise that. So maybe don't focus as much on the past, even though it is very important, but to sort of show them the future and the direction that we could be going in. Thank you very much. And so what we are going to do now is we're going to move back to our panel, and the question to the panel will be, number one, what can we do? What practical things can we do from your experience of observing not just your own journey, but many of you, the journey of your children and your grandchildren? What can we do to engage that third and fourth generation? And also I'm interested to know in what else can we do to also make sure that we keep those links alive so that it's a continuous journey and it's not just a one-way journey. So Jenna, I think we will maybe start with you and then work our way round the table.
I think I'll follow up to the previous what was your name? Because I couldn't see. Who just spoke?
Kanika Leo. He's Ralph Straker's granddaughter.
Okay. It's what I said previously, the question of, you know, the arts and the visual arts and movies and TV and just the arts in general, and having a grounding of the past is important, but also for third and fourth generations to see themselves in the narrative, see themselves in the story is also really important. And finding ways of using the arts so that you can have that combined wisdom of the past that we have from first and second generations, but also to make it a lot more contemporary so that the younger people can see themselves, I think is really, really important. And having a platform, I don't know in what form that would come or what shape that would be, but having a platform to have those sorts of artistic expression would be a really great way, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Invite us, young lady, to come and talk to you. Ask us questions. Interact with us. We don't listen to the same music. We never will. Okay? You're not going to come to your grandmother's do because you don't do the stuff that we did. Yes? And the stuff that your granddad did, yes, you don't do anymore, do you? So you're totally different. But you need to understand what your history is, because it's very important for you to know what your history is, because we are the people who came to this country. We laid the foundations. And I said in a previous many years ago, we were the ones that cracked the glass ceiling. But when we got there, we found that it was reinforced with concrete. You lot have to now chip away at the concrete. But if you interact with us, and I don't know how you're going to do it, because if you say that you're going to have this old man come and speak to you, you tell him, I say, I don't want to hear that from the old man. My granddad told me all about that before. So you're not going to do it. But you need to know, not from me, I'm not talking about me, but there's so many people within the community that have these experiences that are there to help you. And you know, there's so much wisdom within your community. And I want to address this now to the people here who have set roots here, who have come here. I've been here now, my next birthday I'll be here for 55 years. So I've spent 2/3, well, three quarters of my life so far in the United Kingdom. Okay? So what am I? I don't even know what I am anymore. I know one thing, that I was born in Barbados is still my... I set a young lady up in business in Barbados because I used my money to help people who are less fortunate than us. And I'm appealing to some of you guys to look for opportunities down there to help people, because we don't do it. We are very selfish in the things that we do. We can help people down there. And if we can't do it individually, we can do it collectively. You know, because some of the stuff that we send home, we don't know what happens to it. Yes? So let us do things down there. Let's interact with the people down there and get some of these things going that will help future generations. Because God knows, I'll tell you something, we had the best of it. You guys have got a tough time ahead of you.
Thank you.
I agree with what's been said so far, and I think that the stories of the past do need to be recorded. One thing we did in Ipswich was recording of our elders. We recorded it and put it into the library, and the schools actually use it, especially the primary schools, they use it. So I think that's something that perhaps the Commission again could think about, is recording these histories and having them available as a resource for young people to access. That's dealing with the past and putting that so that it's always there, because a lot of these stories are going to go with our elders as well. And I think with the young people, we do really need to empower them, because as Dalton quite rightly said, the journey that he had, as the journey that I have, as the journey that that young lady at the back is going to have, seems to be getting harder and harder. So we need to enable them, we need to strengthen them, we need to actually give them the tools and the wisdom to be able to forge their way through, not only as a black individual, but as an individual, and then also to keep the authenticity of where they come from, the heritage, the Barbados bit, because that's going to disintegrate if we don't look after that. We need to cherish that and make that grow. And I think, as this lady said here with the stories and so on, there are also much more practical ways in getting them involved in what's going on in the building here or in any of the other meetings. We're all on various committees. We need to get the young people involved on those committees and get them quite active, because they are the future. And if we don't equip them, that they won't do it. They won't do it. So we need to kind of really work quite hard to make their future solid for them.
Thank you.
Okay, now before I came here and I was putting my little talk together, I got my two daughters around. One is 26 and the other one is 34. And I said, what makes you interested in the Caribbean? And she said, Dad, it's you. And she said, I said, why? She said, it's something that you did when she was at school. I think we set up a Caribbean evening, and I got some people on board that brought some things and showed us, they brought us things that showed us black heroes, and a big photograph, and it pointed out all the different people that did various things throughout the ages. And she said, because of that, she went away and did her own research to find out about her own roots. And she said that was the catalyst that started it. And she went to school in Harrow, so there wasn't a lot of black kids in the school. It was probably a handful. But she said that is what made her start trying to find out about Barbados and where black people came and the different things that happened to us along the way. And she said to me, Dad, why don't you give them that photograph of black heroes? Because we never hear about them in schools. So I gave it to the teachers, and they put it in the staff tea room. So the kids never had a chance to look at it, which I thought was out of order, so I just took it back off them. So, so she said, it's just having access. So she said, I'll tell you what, Dad, let's go and talk to the history teacher. And luckily, the history teacher had an open mind, and she was prepared to talk to the black kids about some of the black history. But the only thing, the problem was, she said, it's not part of the curriculum. So she couldn't spend a lot of time on it, so she could only give them a little piece here and a little piece there. So it was still down to the individuals to go and do their own research. So I don't know how we can capture or try to bridge that gap. That could be a way of actually trying to target that particular age group, to actually give them something to start looking for.
Thank you.
Can I just say, I have 3 adult sons, and as you were talking, I thought, as the young lady was talking, I thought, I wish I'd spoken to my sons before I got here about how they would want to connect with Barbados. They've been to Barbados, but their children haven't. But whatever it is, it needs to be distant connection. I really do not want another splinter generation. So we have to find ways of them engaging with our story, but staying here or staying somewhere where we can keep our families together. We also need to know how Barbados sees it. Does Barbados have a vision of what 3rd or 4th generation Barbadian children could or should be doing in Barbados, and will they be listened to? So we need to be clear about that. And are there half a dozen things you'd like to see my sons and their children engaged in, and will you listen? If I can just give a plug to, so I don't know how to get, I really don't know the answer, but I'll go back and talk to my children and my grandchildren. If I can then give a plug for a book, 2 books, by the Reach Society. I wish I bought them tonight actually, I didn't think about it, because I wrote the introduction to the one for 7 to 9-year-olds, and it's called Our Story, By Us, For Us. There's a book for the older 10 to 12, 34-year-olds, and this one for younger children. And the younger one has grandparents telling their 2 young grandchildren about the story of the Caribbean in the 1900s. So it's not about slavery. Slavery is mentioned very briefly, but it charts the challenges that the Caribbean islands went through between 1900 to, well, certainly it brings us up to the current day. And that's a really good, I'm just plugging it. Go on the Reach website, buy it for your children and your grandchildren. I don't have the answer. My children stay connected through me. I stayed connected through my parents and my aunt. I mean, I have lots of aunts, but one particular aunt. So they stay. So I know my eldest son is desperate to take his children back, so his children will have to stay connected through him. But in terms of doing something that makes a difference and having an impact on Barbados, I've always felt that as I live abroad, it's not my business to tell Barbados how to run Barbados. But I know that's not what everyone believes. But yeah, young lady, I'll talk to the young lady. She's got the right idea.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't need it.
Oh, you don't.
Thank you. So please, a big round of applause for our panel. And a round of applause for our cameraman who has been diligently live streaming this evening. And I'm sure somebody else will say it as well, but can we also have a round of applause for Tyrone, who tirelessly organises these events. And he keeps the newsletters coming, and it's been fantastic. And I also, Tyrone, want to thank you for the invitation to come back and chair for a 3rd year. And in terms of just kind of closing and summarising, and Olivia, in case you don't know, Olivia Worrell, I'll be calling you up in a minute, so start getting yourselves ready, okay? From my perspective, I'm not in that 3rd and 4th generation. However, I feel that I'm a child of the social media age, and I see there's a lot of scope. I actually keep in touch with Barbados through Facebook and through Twitter, because I can read The Nation, I can look at the beautiful Barbados website. When my sister graduated a couple of months ago, she lives in Barbados. I watched the entire ceremony via webcam, much like you're doing here. And so that's the way I've been keeping myself engaged with what's going on, and with the young people in the room and those who are not here. I know they spend a lot of time on social media. So I would say one of the things that can be done will involve the medium that young people are actually looking at and watching for themselves. So I just want to say thank you all for your contribution and for coming here this evening and giving your time, and for those who put questions forwards. Once we have heard from Olivia, and I guess that Tyrone will close, we will then move to the food table. So thank you all very much. And Olivia, who is the president of the BOCFA, she is also the IVCBA advisor, and she is now going to do a vote of thanks. And thank you all for your participation.
Good evening, everybody. High Commissioner, Deputy High Commissioner, members of the panel, and you lovely people for being here. For those of you who do not know, BOCFA means Barbados Overseas Community and Friends Association. It is the oldest Barbadian organization in the UK. We came into being in 1966, and we've had our difficulties, but we're still here doing our bit. I've been asked by Tyrone to stand in and do the vote of thanks. I have to say that in case I don't cover everything. That's my excuse. However, I'm humbled. Thank you, sir. Deputy High Commissioner and Deputy High Commissioner, you've been given, first of all, I would like to thank you for giving us the facility this evening to have this lecture. Thank you very much. You've, however, I believe, been handed a couple of challenges this evening. Two that I can think of, that you, with the help of the organizations, because you've said publicly several times that you're here to work with us. And me, for one, from BOCFA, and I know the other organizations here, are willing and waiting and anxious to help you and work with you as well. And I'll rephrase that and say we've been given two challenges, at least from this evening. How to engage our young people. And not only in the Caribbean or in Barbados, but in life here in the UK, which, as several panel members have pointed out, is getting more and more difficult. And the second one, Marva, you touch my heart. For those of us who came here as youngsters in our 10s and teens, we know what it feels like to feel this disconnection. And you're right. I don't know anybody that's dealt with it yet, and that's something that maybe just two things that we could start with to deal with at two different levels. So thank you for the facility and welcome on board, and we're here to assist. I'd like to thank the panel, an excellent panel. We've enjoyed your stories. The only criticism I have, we didn't have enough time. And I'd like to thank you, Marlene Devonish. You are a brilliant chair. You, Tyrone keeps asking you because you can control, and you allow us to get as much as possible out of a very short evening. But I think that there is so much work that we have to do, and it's been said for the last 3 years, but I really think we need to follow up on these sort of occasions and not just do it once a year. So the panel members, thank you all again for a very interesting evening. I'd like to thank the young people that started the evening off. Those of you who were late missed a fantastic set of folk songs by Phyllis and Claudine. Thank you. And we also had a couple of poems by Logan McGarry Logan is my sister. I'm sure that lots of you don't know that, but she's been very good to me in the last couple of months, allowing, helping, coming to, she's written a poem for the Women's League, and then she shocked me by saying she'd actually written one specifically for independence, and I'm really, really touched and honored to be your sister. Thank you very much. We'd also like to thank this evening Stephen King and Paul Brown for providing the technical know-how to tape and record us, and a lot of us lose a lot of history through not recording it. But we won't lose this evening, it's recorded. I'd also like to thank all the ladies who did the food that we're about to take part, to enjoy. We've been smelling it and getting more and more hungry and more restless all evening. I've been given some names. Please, if there's anyone missing, we thank you and apologize. Yvonne Phillip, Cicely Hines, Marcia Patterson, Joan Catwell, Marina Roach. Myrna, it's your brother that wrote this. Sorry. National Council of Barbadian Associations. And Tyrone, you've already been thanked, but I thank you anyway for having the vision to put these lectures together. And even though lots of us are angry with you about different things and we could kill you most of the year, we have to thank you for putting the lecture together, and I hope you will continue. I've been asked to remind those of you who do not know about, we've got loads of independence functions going on, but in particular, the service at Bath, which is how we are going to come together and celebrate on Independence Day itself. There are coaches leaving their different parts of London. If you do not know, please look, speak to Tyrone or myself, or there is information at the High Commission as well. You've still got time to organize yourself to go to Bath and join us on Sunday for Independence. The service is at 2:30? 3:15? Okay, it's quite late, quite reasonable. Those of us who have to go out on Saturday night and get up early Sunday morning, it wouldn't be so bad. We're all getting older, but we can still do it. So come and join us. And now, you all are welcome to take part in the refreshments, and I don't know how, but someone's going to direct you down the bottom. Thank you. No. One last thing. Thank you all for coming, because no matter what was here this evening, without your participation and you actually coming, it would be all for nothing. So give yourselves a big cheer.